Navigating global challenges shaping the future of Aotearoa, New Zealand's digital economy, where you are going to hear from 4 leading bank CEOs. And please note, for this panel, you'll be able to submit your questions for the Q&A through the conference app. We're not going to chuck the microphone around this time. Send it through the conference app. We'll take a look at it and respond in the session. A wonderful lineup of wahine toa. Aren't they fantastic? Give them a big round of applause. I was going to welcome them up on stage, but, you know, being pragmatic, wanting to get the show on the road, they're already up there, so thank you for that. Victoria Short, CEO of ASB. Kerry Boyal, CEO of TSB. Antonia Watson, CEO of ANZ. And Catherine McGrath, CEO of Westpac. Right, I'm going to pivot and sit down here. Just watch me. All right, so here's a session overview. Welcome to this high-profile panel featuring 4 of Aotearoa, New Zealand's leading bank CEOs. Today, we'll discuss the future of the digital economy, focusing on long-term intergenerational strategy, innovation priorities, competition, and collaboration. Our conversation will explore how global challenges such as geopolitical tensions and technological advancements are shaping the future of payments and the broader economy of Aotearoa. Now, these leaders will also provide insights into how their respective banks are navigating these challenges and what they see as the most critical steps to ensure New Zealand remains resilient, innovative and competitive. So thank you very much. And I'll just remind you again, if you want to put in a question, just go through the app and submit the question that way. Okay, so let's start the discussion. Thank you all for coming along. It's fantastic. So we're going to look at first intergenerational strategy, setting Aotearoa up for the future. We're talking about the long term. We heard this morning about the 100-year plan. That's a very te ao Māori thing. Whakapapa, I always call it the long game, but a very Māori thing. But the government is pushing for a 30-year bipartisan national infrastructure plan. And we know that the business community is behind an infrastructure investment strategy for Aotearoa, recognising that we need to think strategically and long-term to set Aotearoa up for future success. Leveraging technology and leveraging digital advancements is critical to this vision. So I'd like to get your thoughts on the type of intergenerational strategy and long-term planning required to build a prosperous digital economy for future generations in Aotearoa. So, Victoria, maybe we can start with you. ASB's been vocal about the importance of thinking long-term and supporting the aspirations of New Zealanders and communities for generations. From your perspective, what are the key challenges in balancing short-term goals with the long-term investments needed to build a thriving digital economy?
Kia ora, Mike, and kia ora, everyone. I don't need to tell this room that we've probably got a list of around 1,000 things that we want to do in payments at any one time. You look around the globe and my payments team certainly have a very long list of things to do. I think what's really important though is we get it well sequenced and we also think about our context and think about the changing nature of our country as well. So as we may have thought about payments landscape previously, I think the geopolitical risks that you talked about right in the intro there, they've really come up on the radar. And so what I think it means for payments is safety and security is really paramount when we think about our long-term planning. I also think about like the way the country's changing and what that means for us culturally. Because when I look around other countries, I really admire their long-term planning, but I know that their long-term planning is done in the context of their culture and their country, and we're not all the same. So we can look to India and Singapore and some of the Scandinavian countries which we look to, but we've got to work out what's different about us, our starting point, and the country that we are going to evolve into, which is why I think long-term planning really matters Otherwise, I think we're going to get a bit of a scattergun kind of approach. So that's very supportive of a 30-year infrastructure plan. And I think thinking about the digital economy and how payments enables that is really important.
Fantastic, thank you. Catherine, you've spoken about the importance of setting Aotearoa back on a growth trajectory and getting out of the infrastructure and innovation investment stagnation we've found ourselves in over the last decade or so. What role do you see Westpac playing in shaping how the digital future of Aotearoa will come about?
Tēnā koe mai, kia ora tātou. I think to just pick up Victoria's point, the first thing that we need to continue to recognise is that we're a country of a different scale than some of the other countries that we look at and admire. And so when I look at implementing solutions here, the proportion of our budget that they are, given the size of the banks, is far more material than it is if you're in a far larger organisation and in a far larger country. And so that means we have a real opportunity to cherry pick when we learn from others and then do way better, which is, in my experience, is what we have historically done. So that means thinking about the sequencing and order. So one of the things I'd love us to step into a bit more to really turbocharge the digital economy is digital ID as quite a foundational starting point for us to step into that then opens up and enables a whole lot of things, not just for financial services. And we talk about productivity being a challenge here. If I think about, as someone that came back into the country, how many times I had to verify that I was who I said I was, it was incredibly irritating. And we're doing that multiple times across multiple industries all of the time. And so working out how to do digital ID in a way that works for New Zealanders as a foundational document that we can then build a whole lot of other things on top of, for me feels like a great start. But I think we run the risk of not doing this stand back, thinking longer term and saying what's the right order in which to do things. We've got the foundations in first, rather than, frankly, we're painting the walls before we've put the insulation in, is what we run the risk of.
Fantastic. Okay, Kerry, kia ora. TSB, as a New Zealand bank that has a strong focus on community-driven growth, how do you balance local communities and specific regional needs with a long-term intergenerational national strategy in today's fast-evolving digital landscape?
There's a lot in that. So firstly, I guess we think about communities at TSB as more than just a physical geographical location. So you think about groups of people that have got different wants and needs, first home buyers, uni students, somebody leaving home going flatting for the first time. And they all have a need for access to financial services and access to the payment system. Digital's the thing that levels the playing field for everybody and doesn't worry about borders. So wherever your customers are regionally located, across the Motu or offshore, having the right secure, quality digital interactions, having digital ID so that people can validate themselves wherever they are and have access to, world-class technology in their phone that can enable them to be accessing their financials, that levels the playing field, and it doesn't matter where your community is based. We do try though, because we've got probably around about 40% of our base are in Taranaki and the rest are across the Motu. And so we do try and play a role in bringing innovation and learning to the Taranaki community. Not long ago we had the Great AI Roadshow bouncing around the country, and we brought that to Taranaki and brought in a lot of local businesses to start to engage and understand how might they play with this stuff. So we do try and think nationally and locally at the same time.
Thank you. And Antonia, welcome. ANZ New Zealand has lent into understanding the intergenerational impacts your bank has had in Aotearoa, and you're heavily investing in generational change towards a digital future. What's your view on the type of digital economy we should be building in Aotearoa, and how does this align with your bank's long-term strategy?
So it's interesting because you started off the questioning talking about, a 30-year infrastructure plan, and what worries me a little bit is that we're thinking of 30 years of building some roads and some, offshore wind and some power generation and a whole lot of physical things, when actually the future is very much in the digital space. And one of the things I think that we can think about as a country, if we're developing a 30-year plan and those things, agree with everything that everyone said, but there's a couple of other things I could add to it, which is digital inclusion. So making sure that it is available for everyone, that we've got the right education, not just in how to use the tools and how to be safe, which is really important, but also in developing people that they can be part of this digital economy because they've got the right skills in place. I think there's a very, and it's been highlighted a couple of times this year, a very important trade-off that we need to get right between regulation and innovation. We don't want regulation to hold back innovation, but equally we don't want to innovate in a vacuum that isn't safe for customers, because if there's one thing, and one thing about some of the things that are going on at the moment, for example, open banking, is that we have actually been really successful. We were operationally ready with the payments APIs in May. We've had 15% of our eligible customers use an open banking payment. In the UK, it took them 5 years to get 14% of their 14% use. So I think it's to Catherine's point about let's not try and do everything. Let's really be clear about what do Kiwis want, what is useful for them, and focus our scarce resources there in a really safe and secure way.
Yeah, fantastic. I see we've had a question come through on the app, and maybe we can do a couple of these as we're moving through these questions here. I don't know who wants to answer this, but the question is, in your view, does regulatory congestion get in the way of your bank's ability to innovate at pace and deliver the change consumers are looking for?
I'm happy to start on that one. Yes, is the...
You heard it here first.
That's the short answer. And it's not just regulatory. There's a lot of mandatory stuff that we need to do. And so if I look at it, we are doing confirmation of payee, we're doing open banking APIs, we're doing Deposit Takers Act. There's a series of things, many of which impact the payment system all at the same time, which means you have a bulge of work. And if you've got finite resources, which we do here versus other countries, because we're smaller, then it stops your ability either to have too many heads under the hood of the bonnet at the same time, or we don't have enough people with the right skills to do the change. So what would be ideal, back to the 30-year infrastructure roadmap, is what's the 5-year plan? What's the amount of money that we should all be tucking aside every year? Because particularly with payments, they need to be coordinated, it needs to be interchangeable, we need to do things on a lot of things at the same time, so it makes sense for consumers. And we just all step through that in the same way at the same time. Because even now, some of the things that we're doing, some banks really understandably have got other priorities and they're saying, actually, I can't do this thing right now because I didn't know that you wanted me to do it in 2024. And so having that clear path that says this is what all of you need to line up and deliver year by year by year, and we can do it in the right order, would be amazing. And then I think it would create capacity for us to be innovating more and faster in a way that has been tough to do when you've had a congestion of regulatory change.
Right, so I guess then it also comes down with, if you've got finite resources, priorities and how you rate your priorities in this bulge of work that you have, yeah?
Yeah, and you always, by definition, need to put regulatory and mandatory change first, which squeezes out the capacity of those skilled people to do the more innovative work.
If I kind of add to a little bit of that, we've had a few false starts. So picking up on digital identity as an example, I think a lot of people would say that digital identity is it's foundational and we really need it. But when and how, that's the big debate. So 7 years ago, ASB embarked with a bunch of others to create a digital identity. This is not a new concept. Quite a few, I'm sure there's a lot of people in the room who have been in and around digital identity efforts. And a lot of effort, a lot of money went into it, but ultimately it wasn't successful. Probably was using technology that was a bit too early in terms of distributed ledger technology that was too early at the time 7 years ago. But
was it because of the take-up or it just...
No, I mean, really what happened was we thought we had the right group of people. So we had the government, we had ourselves as a bank, we had other representatives from other industries who were all wanting digital identity to be the backbone of enabling a digital economy. So I think, this is back to this kind of long-term thinking. There's an example, tried to make it happen, it didn't work because ultimately everyone had different ideas and it broke down. But if you can actually get this runway, if you can get bipartisan, multi-industry support, then I think we've got a better chance of actually pulling it off. And we need regulation that's also going to be supportive of what we're trying to do too. So just a kind of an add, I guess, to avoiding regulatory congestion and getting regs in the places where we really need them as an enabler.
And I would add to that we could all go off and do our own thing and create a proprietary digital ID, but kind of what's the point in that? And I always go back to a time I was in a branch in Christchurch and some people came in and they ID'd themselves with a Ukrainian national ID card. How the hell is our staff member meant to know that that's an okay form of ID? Who would know? The immigration official that gave them their right to work in New Zealand. So government has to be involved in this. It can't all be about New Zealand passports and driver's licences. A huge proportion of our customers don't have either of the above.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's move to innovation priorities and how we're going to affect the long-term intergenerational changes we want for Aotearoa. We often tend to lump banks in together into a homogenous group of sameness, but you are all fierce competitors, friends today, of course, and each have your own digital innovation strategies. So I'm interested to hear, and maybe we can all talk on this point, but interested to hear how each of you is juggling your priorities in innovation space and what you think needs to change to boost the innovation agenda.
How about I jump in first?
Yeah.
So we try very hard, to Catherine's point, and actually all my colleagues have made the same point in terms of congestion and the load coming down the pipe and scarce resources. So that certainly plays out in a smaller bank. So we try very hard to look at our investment portfolio, our regulatory radar, and split our resources and our time across meeting our regulatory and compliance requirements, making sure the bank is working well and running well and serving our customers today, and then thirdly, building the bank of the future. So we do try and make sure that we're sort of advancing on all fronts. I wouldn't say the investment is split 33, 33, 33. That would definitely not be the case, albeit I would love it to. So we certainly focus on that. What would enable us to go faster would be some of these things like government regulators and industry bodies aligning on things like digital ID, the safe data sharing rights, some of that base layer of infrastructure that doesn't exist today. And if the protocols are turning up differently across the industry as a small bank, do I adopt this one or do I adopt this one? It's quite difficult because you can't do all. You really need to pick one. So having that base layer of infrastructure would be really helpful, and that enables you to innovate in the experience on top of that rather than spending all your effort trying to understand what the standardisation is or isn't going to be over time.
Thanks, Kerry. Anyone else?
I think, one of the observations around the industry is the sea of sameness. A big chunk of the delivery that we have to do is the same. We've all got to get ISO 22 in, like every bank has got to get that in. We've all got to get in all of the regulations. So there is a real base of delivery that is responding to the agenda. So I think then each bank, and this gets to the competitive part, it's got to work out where we want to differentiate. And for us at ASB, it's definitely been in helping people navigate the cost of living challenges. So we've poured a lot of our innovation into tools that are going to help Kiwis get further ahead in terms of their financial wellbeing. Tools like Support Finder. So, we've got $45 million that's now in our customers' accounts as a result of that one initiative. I think a lot of what we deliver has to be the same. Payments has to be interoperable, but then we can innovate over the top. So that I think is where we will all have our unique areas of competition.
The only bit I'd add is I think what we are starting to do with APIs and exchange information more is that innovation isn't necessarily me building something. Because actually there'll be fintechs that have a far more targeted, beautiful capability than I can build or design, that I can then start to plug in and give them distribution and scale. And so I think the opportunities that we have moving forward are quite broad about partnering in the right way with some of the right partners, and that innovation isn't just us doing stuff in our own stack, it's about deploying other people's capability to our customers.
Antonio?
Yeah, I think I'd just draw on what Catherine was saying, is that, when you're a big full service bank, you need to be everything to everyone. When the advantage that a small nimble fintech can have is say, well, I'm going to concentrate on this bit of the market with this brand new technology. We're operating on legacy systems that we're gradually updating. Room between the regulatory overlay permitting, but the ability for others to be able to do that on simple technology while we're still renovating and are needing to deliver to a very wide range of customers. We can't pick and choose because we are a full service bank, and that's our role in New Zealand.
We heard a little bit about that with a case study before lunch with Upbank in Australia. Collaborate or die.
That's right.
That's the message of today. Not my message, just passing along. Don't shoot the messenger. Okay, we've had a question through, and this is quite a good one. Do you agree with the Reserve Bank New Zealand panellists this morning? I think it was Ian who talked about that New Zealand had fallen behind since the FPOS days. I think his analogy was we'd gone from being the All Blacks to a runner-up of a club rugby competition. That we've been leapfrogged by the rest of the world. How do you feel about that?
I think there are elements of that are completely fair. I remember going over to the UK and going into a petrol station and saying, can I have cash back with that, please? And they looked at me like I'd completely lost the plot. Because what was very normal in Aotearoa, because what we'd done with FPOS was not normal, and I had to learn to go to cash machines again.
And you couldn't use a PIN, you had to sign for your card, for your switch card.
Yeah. So, I think we're far better than we're currently turning up. But I think this point to the earlier question about congestion is part of the challenge. And I do, because if I look at the last 4 or 5 years, most of which I haven't been here, all the banks have been spending a lot of time doing things that they've been asked to do rather than innovating at the other end of the scale. And so I think, one, hopefully we're through a big bulk of what's impacted many of us. Two, I hope that we will learn about cherry picking the best of what the world's done when we're deploying stuff that's mandatory as opposed to doing the whole shooting match. And then finally, it will give us capacity to start to innovate again. And I have a lot of confidence in the number 8 wire mentality that we still have, where we get great customer insight, we choose to do things for customers, we're doing things with Indigenous communities, we've got more work to do as an industry, but we're doing things better than other places in the world, that we step in and start to lead again. And I think we've got all of that potential. We just need a bit of freedom to be able to get on with it.
I think the other lesson from FPOS is, which I think is well taken, and I don't need to tell people in this room, I hope, how complex and costly payment systems can be, is that you had a complex and costly system with no commercial model attached to it. So there wasn't the ability for it to be profitable and reinvest those profits in growth and innovation and things like that. So, the innovation was left to the card schemes, and they've done a good job. I'm very happy with my card on my watch that I can tap in pretty much every merchant these days.
Okay. Now, if it was able to significantly cut the red tape, if you were able to significantly cut the red tape and compliance for each of you, so you could invest more in innovation, what areas would you like to invest in and why?
Digital identity, financial crime, AML, hands down any day of the week, tomorrow.
Digital identity.
And customer security, safety and security for customers. You know, the customer experience is really important, cool stuff is really important, but if you've got a whole industry that relies on trust, we're looking after people's deposits and they expect to get them back. We lend them out long. Trust is number one, so that is where the priority is always going to be outside regulatory requirements.
Kerry?
I don't disagree with that as a priority. I guess I would love a little bit more time to engage in some of the new technology and where things are heading in the future, play with AI a little bit with our customers, with our small business customers in particular, and understand where things could go. I guess it's a little bit to that leapfrog, but that is assuming that all the home fires are not burning, that they are nicely stoked and ticking along. But certainly the digital identity, those infrastructure rails are the things that we're missing at the moment. So if they were there and the regulatory red tape lightened up for a bit, I would probably go and try and find something really interesting and innovative to solve small business customers' problems.
Yeah, the speed of change in that area particularly is just phenomenal, isn't it? I mean, when Steve was talking this morning, opening up the conference, he mentioned the last conference 2 years ago, ChatGPT wasn't even a thing, you know, and here we are, and it's this massive player in the market. But we've just had another question come through, which is a good one, I think, and it goes to what you're talking about, Victoria. Several of you have talked about the opportunity around digital identity. What needs to happen so we actually start to see that?
Well, having a failed previous attempt, maybe share a few of the learnings. I do think this is about a commitment at a New Zealand Inc. level. This isn't for banks, this is for multiple sectors, it's for people in the country, and so I think it's a bipartisan commitment from the government that digital identity is an enabler of a digital economy. And from there, I think there's a lot of different industries and organisations that would be really willing, able to get in and help.
The bit I'd add to that is about having clear ownership within the government. So one of the things that's been great over the last couple of days to do with fraud and scams is that the government has said we'll put one person in charge, because before that it was sitting across multiple departments, which makes it very hard to get any traction. So one, having clear leadership within government and prioritised. And I think the second thing is starting to look at who are the amazing providers that we've got. So I think one of the things that the industry's done well with confirmation of payee is we looked around the world and said, who knows how to do this, which means we're delivering it faster than other countries have done because we've leveraged capability from another market. We've got some amazing companies here, Matter is one of them, who's doing amazing stuff for New South Wales government, they're doing amazing stuff for US Homeland Security, but somehow we're not plugging them in as a capability that we have grown here in Aotearoa to say, how do we leverage that to innovate further and faster? And so looking in our own backyard about some of the capability that we've got, but also looking overseas to say who can help us deliver it and deliver it really well.
And then saying this is how you can trust it.
Yep.
You know, this is who will own it, this is how you can trust it. And if you don't trust it, because there will be, and I think we worry a bit too much about the people who go, think that's a bit of Big Brother oversight, fine, go and queue in the branch.
Okay, now let's talk about the role of collaboration, that word again, and competition and fostering a thriving payments ecosystem. Perhaps we can start with you, Kerry. TSB has a strong history of collaboration with its customers. What more do you think needs to be done to encourage partnerships and innovation in the broader payment sector?
Yeah, look, I think we've probably traversed a bit of that. Partly is, I guess it's a mindset that we need to all be aware we're part of an ecosystem. No one bank, no one organisation can do it. We need to think collectively with fintech, with banks, with industry bodies to actually understand where the genuine opportunities are and keep the right mindset in terms of solving the customer problem, and taking that forward. So that, I think, is, and if we've got those things, those rails, that infrastructure underpinning, it gets easier.
Victoria, what does a thriving payments ecosystem look like to you? And how can ASB contribute to fostering collaboration across the sector?
Yes, I think it's got to start from what customers need and value. So I always start with safety, can't help it. Like if it's not safe, if payments can't be made safely, then we lack the trust and the utilisation. So it has to be safe. It has to be affordable or free or affordable in essence, fast and accessible, and has to provide value. Those are the four things that, I've been in banking now for more than 2 decades. And so every bit of research around what customers want in payments comes back to the core of those things. So we have to make sure that solutions are solving the problems that we need to solve. That's the really important part that I would sort of focus on. So any collaboration has to be built off that basis. Open banking is a great example of that. All of our research on open banking says that customers really need to understand what is the value to them of using the open banking capabilities, and they need to know it's safe. So I think collectively where we can collaborate is really making sure that we help customers understand propositions and the safety of what we're providing.
Thank you. Catherine, at Westpac, how are you balancing the forces of collaboration and competition to drive payments innovation within that ecosystem?
So I think one, it is part of the DNA of Westpac. We're a big agency bank, so that means that we do work with competitors to help provide them the rails, particularly with payments. And so I think there's a bit in our DNA which is great, and it means that we think about some of these things differently. Two, as Victoria was saying, the collaboration is particularly important in things like payments, where what you really want to do is make sure that there is mass adoption. And mass adoption means everybody needs to get confident about it. One of the things that I've banged on about a lot to do with open banking is, I think one of the reasons, as Antonia was saying, that it was so slow in the uptake is that consumers don't have the confidence in what it means and how do they know that who they're sharing their data with is someone that they feel confident in. And in the UK, they do have a centralised approval process, but if you want to check whether they're on the list, even I don't know how to do it unless I Googled far more than I've got time to do. So having a trust mark that says actually, irrespective of whether it's your banking data, your telco data, your electricity data, these are people that are legitimate, and if you tick yes to sharing your data, somebody sensible has said yes, I think would be amazing and help drive that adoption. Now, to do that, we need collaboration across industry, not just within banking. And that is helping us as consumers get confident about a different way of doing things than we've done them so far in our lives.
Thank you. And finally, Antonia, how does ANZ see the role of collaboration with payment service providers and other financial institutions in creating a more dynamic and innovative payments ecosystem?
Well, I'd say that right now it's not as dynamic and innovative as it can be because it's clunky, because everyone that's got a good idea is having to deal bilaterally with every bank. We've all got our own different protocols that we like to look at. It all takes a different amount of time. We do it in a different order. We've done things like develop our pricing models in isolation of each other for something that's not that competitive because every fintech will want to deal with every bank. And so we've got stuff coming that will help with that. So the authorisation we've had from the Commerce Commission that will allow us to talk together about things like risk, how we deal with the various risks, what should the various payments models look like, and the consumer data right that I hope will be the authorisation will allow us to set up accreditation, which is sort of the trust mark that Catherine was talking about. And then the consumer data right will allow clarity over where the liability sits in the chain. How does the consumer trust that their data or their money will be looked after, and who should they go to if they've got a problem? So those things I think are going to start to really amp up this thing. But back to the thing that we've all talked about is let's make sure we're solving problems that consumers need us to solve.
Wonderful. We've just had another question through. Someone can jump in and answer this if you like. If New Zealand were to become a global leader in the payments environment, what would success in that look like to you as banking leaders?
Yeah, I mean, I could I think hands down, we all know that payments has a lot of fantastic information. And if we can harness that information to help our customers make great decisions or make recommendations of how that's going to help them with their financial well-being, ultimately that is success. So it's safe, it's fast, it's affordable, but it's got to have value that helps our customers with decisions on their financial arrangements.
I think the only other bit I'd add, picking up, there was a question before about financial inclusion, is I think sometimes when we race ahead in the digital economy, we risk leaving many behind. And so part of where I think we've traditionally been good is making sure that we're a very equitable country and we take everybody with us. So I think global leaders in payments is about inclusion and not leaving people behind.
Okay, finally, let's discuss open data ecosystems and open banking and the opportunities it presents. So to you all, looking ahead, what opportunities do you see arising from open data ecosystems, and in particular, open banking, and how could they reshape the financial well-being and prosperity for both consumers and businesses?
I think there's an enormous opportunity there. I think that the reduction of friction, the ability to have great startups with simple, a cool idea that can easily link in with banks as we do some of the other stuff that we're wanting to do. The innovation can be done elsewhere, but we can actually easily plug in now that we've got the APIs. I think there's a huge opportunity in financial well-being. Now, whether that is providing your data more easily to get a loan, whether that is someone advising you on what your budget looks like and how you might be able to save some money, to the point before about the cost of living. There's a huge opportunity here as long as we do it well and safely, and it's easy to access for consumers and easy to understand.
Look, I would agree, and we're a lot earlier on that journey than the other banks here. Friction, or the right amount of friction, is important because we are really conscious of the more open you are, the more free that things are, there is a higher risk. So safety is really, really important to get buttoned down. Trust is absolutely critical, which is where those standard protocols will come in. But I completely agree. We're ecosystem players now. Not one of us is going to be all things to all people. Some of the smaller banks like TSB, we specialise in certain target customer groupings. We don't try and be all things to all. And so fintechs similarly are targeting a specific service, specific value, specific group of customers. But if they can connect then with all of the banking ecosystem, then actually all of our clients, all of Aotearoa, Kiwis in New Zealand get access to that, which I think is amazing. Yeah.
Catherine?
The main theme for me is the words that have come up a lot, which is it just needs to be consumer-led. And we risk innovating and we risk spending money on things that consumers don't eventually adopt and don't have the outcomes that we want. And so really getting that insight on what is it that's going to turn the dial and make a difference for consumers, what are the characteristics of it that makes adoption really easy, and being driven by that rather than anything else, I think for me is the heart of it.
Victoria?
So customer value, it's the same answer. It's what are the problems you're trying to solve and how does that help your customers? So that's where open banking's got to really focus, because otherwise, as we've seen from around the world, we'll get really low take-up. And that is the challenge with open banking around the world.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. It's been an absolute privilege and really special to have you all up here together. Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for sharing your valuable insights. Today's discussion has highlighted the importance of intergenerational planning, innovation and collaboration as critical factors in shaping the future of New Zealand's banking and payments ecosystem. Let's continue to embrace these challenges and opportunities as we work towards a more resilient, innovative and inclusive future for Aotearoa. Truly privileged to hear from you all today. Thank you, and please everyone join me in thanking our panellists for their time and energy.